Hey friends, here with another leadership moment. And again, always so grateful for your support of Studio Wesley. Okay, so let me just be super clear. I get super insecure pretty much anytime I am about to speak out loud, whether it be a sermon or something virtual like this or a meeting with a student. I get super insecure super quickly because I'm like, oh, what if I say something wrong? What if I say something that's incorrect? Or, it's an uncouth, like it doesn't land well. It's not considering all, I could come up with all the list of things that I'm like, maybe I'll just stay home and not talk. And yet, our job as leaders is to be the ones who open our mouths and attempt to say something that's helpful, something that may be challenging, something that'll be affirming, something that will call our students to be their best self. So I'll tell you what I do when I really find myself leaning into this just insecure and anxious kind of existence. I remind myself that I am deeply loved by God and that nothing could separate me from God's love. It's so basic, and yet the more I ground myself in the truth that I am loved by God as a leader, the more that I remind myself and dig my roots deep in the revelation of God's love for me, the more I'm able to manage my insecurity in a way that allows me to show up and be the leader that my students need me to be. Often that grounding myself in God's love for me, causes me to reject the grounding of things like being successful. If my grounding is in being successful, feeling like I've really done the job, that's great, but sometimes we don't feel that way. Sometimes we don't feel like we're actually saying what needs to be said or doing what needs to be done, and that's just a normal part of the gig. Like, there's some days that are awesome, and then there's some days you're like, whoa. New mercies in the morning. And so grounding myself in my success actually could be shaky because success is not always the context of our work. It helps me reject grounding myself in simply the timing that I'm a leader right now because that's just how it worked out, that I was the one that sort of was called to this moment, and I won't always be here, and so I can just really relish myself in this time, because sometimes that's just not enough. Like the idea that like this is the right time, this is the right moment, I'm the person for this moment. Sometimes I'm just not feeling that. I know there's some people that like that's how they psych themselves up, like I am the campus minister, so yes, I am the one. But sometimes that's not enough, this sense of timing. Because what if somebody got it wrong? And y'all, for a long time, I was like, surely there will be an email in my inbox tomorrow that's going to be like, thanks, man, appreciate it, but you're done. We've made a mistake. And if I'm honest, I still think that 18 years in, I'm waiting for the bishop to send me that email. Hey, man, we'd like to get a clergy person in there now. And so grounding myself even in the timing, this moment, it's not always enough for me. It also helps me reject, and this one's the hardest, grounding myself in my sense of my own competence. We definitely need it. We definitely need this sense that we have what it takes and that we've had the experiences, had the training. But y'all, sometimes these conversations, there's no textbook. Sometimes these moments that our students find themselves in, like, no, never been here before, never heard it like that, don't even know how to help you get out of it. And so this idea that I would ground myself in my own competence only works if I only get the scenarios that I know about, that I know how to deal with. And yet more and more I find myself in scenarios where I'm like, I've never heard this before. I don't even know what to do. And that's when my insecurity flares up. That's when my anxiety flares up, when the things I normally ground myself in are not stable enough. And so I ground myself in God's love for me. I ground myself in the truth that nothing, a lapse in timing, a lack of competence, or even this sense that success is elusive, none of that can separate me from God's love. I want to submit to you this book by Henry Nouwen, Life of the Beloved. It's a book that I've read a few times, and it always brings me back to this place where I ground myself, literally dig my roots deep in the love that God has for me. It's unconditional. It's always going to be there. And that is my stability as a leader. It's the stability I'm always leaning into. I haven't gotten this perfect. In fact, even recording this video today, there was a part of me that was like, oh God, I don't even know if any of this is like helpful. Why am I here? Maybe I'm not the leader I thought I was. Maybe I don't have anything good to say. All of that just floods my brain. And then I remind myself that regardless of all of this, I am deeply loved by God and nothing can separate me from God's love. So friends, I invite you to consider where you are grounding yourself as a leader. Where are you finding your stability? What are the thoughts? What are the ideas? What are the images? And I want to invite you to consider how the image of God's continuous, never-ending, and never-failing love for you could be the ground by which we then grow our leadership. And so that no matter what comes our way, we know that at the end of the day, in the beginning of the day, in the middle of the moment, we are deeply loved by God. Hope that was helpful for you, friends. Thank you so much for your support of Studio Wesley, and I'll see you next time for another leadership moment. Be well.